Hi, my name is JC.
My name is Juan. Welcome to the Couch, a podcast where real therapists talk about real things.
Please remember that we are therapists, but we are not your therapists, and this podcast is intended for educational purposes only.
Mm, Episode 3, First Comes Love. This is all about
Yes,
romantic relationships.
yes, yes. I've been looking
Time
forward to
for
this
time
episode.
for
Can you tell?
MTV.
What is it next? Do you remember the show Next on MTV?
That was cold, right? That bus will come and take people. Is that it?
Yo, yes. I think about that every day, and frankly, I aspire to be as unhinged as the early
Mm,
2000s were, but maybe not like super unhinged like that.
I can't
Like, I'm so
remember. My
excited.
brain remembered that. That's so funny. I didn't remember it until you brought it up.
There was also the show where, like, if your parents didn't like your partner, they would pick someone else for
Yeah,
you.
I remember that one too. What
I
was I
forget what that show
watching?
was. I don't know,
You
but
gotta
I
stop.
feel
I
like
can't remember. I can't believe I was watching that kind of stuff.
listen, I feel like there should be an ethnographic study on how that influenced the way that we create relationships now, but that's
Maybe
neither here nor there. Juan, we're talking about romantic relationships today.
we are. We're talking about romantic relationships, and this is a great topic, right? We have the dating culture. We have healthy dating practices, open and honest communication, values and connection, green and red relationship flags. Now, here's what's really um, neat
Mm-hmm.
about first comes love, romantic relationships. So, as a side note, my background is in relationships. I love working with individuals on relationships on twofold. One is relationships you build with others, and relationships you build with yourself. What's neat is so much, and this is my opinion, in the years that I practice education, so forth. So
Mm-hmm.
much of what goes into a romantic relationship, like being able to date, being able to go from friends to dating to engaged to married to all these milestones.
Mm-hmm.
So much of that has to do with the individual level, like you being able to date yourself, you being able to accept yourself, to love yourself. And it's quite interesting because I like to read a lot, and I think I've read not every, but a lot of the relationship books out there by written by different therapists, different individuals, and a large majority of them they go into the importance of becoming your whole self, which is very similar, JC, to what mental health education is, right? Like you and I, we go to school, and one of the key things that they focus with us on is work on yourself before you start helping other people,
Oh yeah.
right? Like, and it's amazing, right, that we have all these academic institutions bring in these students to become mental health professionals, therapists, psychologists, and so forth. And across the board, all of them, they are, as far as I've been told, mine, yours, and all the other individuals I've met, they share with the students, work on yourself before you start helping other people. And
Yeah.
and, and that's what we do. Right? We have our practicum, we have our internship, and then we throughout the way maybe see our own counselor or supervisor. So we're consistently working on ourselves and talking about our ups, our downs, our flaws, and all of these areas, getting to know ourselves. There's even courses that go into like our identity. And what I
Mm-hmm.
find really impactful about that is you stop for a moment and you pause and you go, all of this work that you're doing on yourself, there must be a purpose to it. And of course, is to build acceptance, to identify biases and assumptions, to look at beliefs that are helping you and those that are bringing you down. It's also to utilize all of that so that you can build relationships with other people.
Yeah, being able to look at yourself in a very raw and honest manner, first of all, incredibly uncomfortable. Don't worry, even for us as beginning therapists, I don't know if it was the same for you, Juan, but when we were sitting in our classes and they were
That's
saying,
messed up.
like,
I'm gonna just
but what
pause you
about
for a moment.
you?
I'm gonna pause
Oh,
you for a moment. I am
what?
interrupting you because you just said I don't know if it was like this for you. Are you
Because
insinuating that
I
I'm like
don't.
I'm like 100 years old, like back in
L
the day?
O L. First of all, I'm going to need you not to project your insecurities about age onto my commentary, number one.
My B.
But like, it's okay, I forgive you. Um, but no, I don't know if you had the same like visceral reaction to being asked to look at yourself so closely, because I know that when I was being told to do that in classes, I was like, huh, oh my God, what do you mean? I need to be like, can't I just focus on somebody else's problem? But no, you kind of got to focus on yourself before you can help other people. And I think that's so applicable in a romantic case and in a romantic sense. You know, you cannot engage in a relationship in good faith if you don't know yourself to a certain degree. And when it comes to, finding people and getting to know them, you have to be willing to know yourself a little bit. I think that's like the gist of it all. And in today's dating culture, we are taught to kind of prepackage ourselves for consumption. When you're on a dating app, so like Tinder, Bumble, Hinge, etc., you are reduced down to like a quote, a couple of cute pictures, some very shallow talking points, and whether or not somebody wants to swipe right or left on you. And that can be a very dehumanizing experience in dating because oftentimes you're being chosen for your physical appearance, not necessarily what you have to offer as a person. So it's your job when you start dating to be willing to supersede that, to be willing to be vulnerable and get close to the person you're interested in dating, or even the people you're interested in dating if you hold a polyamorous identity or a non monogamous identity. Either way, you still have to be willing to give yourself to that person for them to examine and see whether or not they're willing to engage with you in a relationship that fulfills you both.
Mm. Put a lot of good words there. Fulfillment and engaging with others, like really getting in there with them. I'm glad you threw out right our first topic, the dating culture, and I think it can be fun and exciting and scary and like what the f am I doing here? All of those
Mm-hmm.
things depending on where you're at in life. I know I've worked with individuals that they're coming out of a divorce and they hadn't dated. It's been like almost 20 years since they were dating.
Mm-hmm.
And that was with their prior partner. And then now they're going back into this field. And I had one of them, and this stuck with me. This person, so they were married for a long while, and then went through a divorce, and they're back on there in a dating app, and they're like, uh, you know what this reminds me of? And I was like, what does it remind you of?
Mm-hmm.
And they were like, have you ever seen American? I think the movie they told me was American Gangster, but I could be misquoting it.
Mm.
It's the movie with Denzel Washington,
I believe that is American Gangster.
right? And then the person's like, all right. Towards the end, he goes to jail, and then he comes out, and then when he comes out, the game's like changed, and there's like
Mm-hmm.
these new gangsters out there and things like that, and you're walking out, people got phones, right? So you just all these differences, and they're sharing with me. They're like, that's what I feel like. When I was dating, it was so different. And then now I'm in this space and it's swiped this way. I got to put a picture, but it's got to be the right one. I got to figure out this stuff about filters. What's my tagline? What interests do I share? Do I share too much? Do I share I have money, but I don't want to sound conceited, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I think it's great that we're starting on dating culture because, what we can look at when it comes to first comes love, building romantic relationships, is identifying, and this is if you're in that dating space, are you ready to be in a relationship? What are you
Mm.
looking for in a relationship? What are you able to provide the other person if you're in a relationship? Versus taking, what are you able to give? And all the way from time, physical, emotional, psychological, all of those components, and getting really clear on those, setting expectations for dating if you're getting on an app, being able to acknowledge that there's going to be some swipes that don't go right.
Mm-hmm.
And then how are you going to get through those ups and downs? So getting very clear on that.
Yeah. And also learning how not to let these experiences validate or invalidate who you are as a person. Um, Dating is scary for a lot of different reasons. Sometimes it comes down to personal safety, whether or not you can trust the person that you're engaging with. But I think the very basic and core fear in dating is showing yourself to someone because what if they don't like me? And it makes you feel very much so like a kid again, like getting picked last for dodgeball, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, does this person like me? Am I good enough? And it very much so brings back to those like family relationships.
Yep.
Like, were you super chastised as a child? Were you allowed to be yourself? Are you able to confidently live authentically? Can you give that authenticity to a partner? It's, yeah, it's scary, man. It's
Yeah.
scary.
And as you're looking at it like scary, that's a level of acceptance, right? Like dating can be scary. Dating can be fun. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Dating can be blank. And that's where it's important for you as you're listening. And if this is a space of the podcast that's interesting to you when looking at dating, fill in the blank. What do you want dating to be? And setting again those clear, expectations. You can even put smart goals around it. And then making sure they are healthy, they're realistic. So those are important elements. And as JC said, acknowledging that you're you, right? You're going in there because a person decides they're going in a different direction. That doesn't mean that your value goes down. It doesn't mean that your value goes down. It simply means that you are you're strong enough and you hold you hold sufficient value to acknowledge that you give other people a choice,
Mm-hmm.
right? There's I like to use analogies as often as I can, maybe too much. So you look at ice cream and you go and get some ice cream, and it's like dating, and the person goes, "You want vanilla?" And you're like, "No, no, I don't want vanilla. I want some of that strawberry." So vanilla was rejected,
Mm-hmm.
yet we didn't stop. We're okay with that. We're okay to say, "Well, I don't like vanilla. I don't have to like vanilla, and it's okay for me not to like vanilla." Right? I like the strawberry flavor. So going into
Oh,
dating at times can help in that manner if you acknowledge that you are also going to find some flavors that are not up your alley. And that doesn't mean those flavors aren't great. Many people love those flavors. It just means that, A, it's great. You know what you like and you know what you don't. And then B, you're also giving other people the same choice when it comes to you.
absolutely. Was I was literally going to say like, yeah, you don't have to like vanilla, but it is your job as someone who is dating to not disparage vanilla likers, if you would.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah.
it's your job to not cause any harm in these dating scenarios, which can honestly be a little difficult for people because rejection is a very strong emotion. And when you get rejected by someone, it can sometimes be really easy to say, okay, well, that person sucks anyway. I don't want anything to do with them. Like, I hope that they step on Legos barefoot for the rest of their life. Like, it's really easy to
Yeah.
start kind of spewing that vitriol, and that's not part of what a healthy dating practice is. In order to date in a healthy way, you have to, we've mentioned, know yourself. You have to know what you're looking for. You also have to be willing to acknowledge the difficulties that will come with this practice and being honest with those that you're dating. Something that I see come up all the time is people who are really hesitant to date, people who are like ethically non monogamous, right? So people who don't think that having one partner is a necessity in a relationship. So perhaps there's an ethically non monogamous person who's genuinely interested in dating or getting to know other people outside of their primary relationship. Other people look at that and they go, oh no, this is just a fancy word for cheating. or this is just a fancy way to like have your cake and eat it too. If you know that's not for you, okay, awesome, but it's not your job to denigrate folk who are into it. Or, if you have very traditional roles in your head, if you're like, I want to get married, I want to be a homemaker, I want my partner to be the person with the income, I want to be able to stay at home with my children, you have to be willing to be
Hmm.
honest with the people you're dating. And that honesty comes at a price because not everybody's going to want to do what you want to do. And that could, raise the expectation for rejection. So
Yep.
then you have to hold firm to what it is that you want and recognize that just because somebody else doesn't want to do that doesn't mean that no one else wants to do that. You have to be diligent in looking for those who match your values.
Correct. Yeah, good point to bring that out there. That goes right back into, as you're looking to start love, find love, build a romantic relationship, a large amount of that goes into you getting to know yourself and you building those areas of integrity, of respect, of connection, acknowledgement, awareness, appreciation, all of those key words. What do you see, JC, as healthy dating practices? And before that, dating practices can also go into marriage. Like you can be in a committed relationship, still think about healthy dating practices.
Oh, absolutely. And, we already touched on a lot of them, just this concept of like knowing yourself and knowing others, being willing to be vulnerable, um, having open and honest communication. I'm really going to harp on that honest point just very quickly. And I'm going to step on a small soapbox, not a big one, and talk about how society kind of pressures us into giving the right answers, even if they're not honest. So when you're dating, there's no such thing as the right answer. It's the right person responding to your answer. So you see a lot of times people will get into these long-standing committed relationships and then all of a sudden they realize they've never talked about whether or not they want children. And maybe one person really wants to expand their family with kids and the other person really, really does not, and it becomes a point of contention because they didn't have that healthy dating practice of honesty, or perhaps those small secrets that you keep from people, like, oh yeah, I snore but it's not that bad, meanwhile you peeling paint when y'all have your first
Hmm.
sleepover together. Or I have a really good relationship with my previous partner, but it's because you guys are still sleeping together and you live together, right? Those are not small things, but in order to give the right answer to the question, in order to be liked, in order to get the validation that dating can give us, we can be tempted to lie.
Hmm.
And that's not a healthy dating practice. You have to be willing to be honest. And it's a difficult skill, but it's wholly beneficial in almost every area of your life.
Yeah. With with a lot of the couples that I work with, they're often coming in and they're in relationships. Um, so I like to look at dating, and it's interesting. A lot of times people think about what are healthy dating practices, and I think what comes to mind is like new couples. Like you meeting
Mhm.
somebody, and what keeps a healthy marriage is like a spark, right? So people see that all over the media or social media. Keep a spark. Now,
Mhm.
a spark, the way I look at it is very literal. I think about, these two rocks and you're creating a spark. Relationships in every element needs spark. You need to spark vulnerability, give it action, bring it to life. You need to spark communication, give it action, bring it to life. And if there's not a spark with communication, then that means what is dying and it's not there
Mhm.
and it's absent. So when we look at dating, it's that in your relationship there is rituals around dating. There's consistent sparks. Sit down
Mhm.
with me if I'm the practitioner there, and you're sharing. Yeah, we just went on a date right before this. We're going on another date this day.
Mhm.
That you pull that out and you put that into a young relationship, and it's very much alive. Right? Two people meet, they get to know each other, and they are going to all these dates. And some are
Hmm.
structured, some are unstructured. They may walk through their university. They may go to get some random ice cream. They may just meet up to sit in the car, listen to music. All of these dates, there's sparks to each one of them. So if you're looking at, how to create healthy dating practices, it's that element of create, right? Bring it to life. Take your partner out.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. A lot of people, they get married and they're like, well, that's it. I achieved the goal. I gotcha. We're married. Like, how much more hard work do I have to do? And that's unfair to your partner and it's unfair to yourself. You fell in love with this person, and unfortunately, as much as we'd like to believe it, love is not enough. Love is not a like standing stagnant stat, if you would, for your relationship. You have to maintain it. And you can love somebody with all your heart and soul, but if that spark is gone, if you're not managing and maintaining that relationship, it's not going to go anywhere. It's not going to thrive.
Correct. With it, I'll add a little bit. And this goes into building romantic relationships. I think we're all aware that life life presents struggle,
Hmm.
right? And there's different cultures and religions that may highlight it as, what is the term I'm losing here? Um, what is the term that connects to Buddhist practice with life? Suffering.
uh, I was about to say I have no idea, but I'm glad you found it.
Yeah, there we go. So life has suffering, and we know that. Um, this for some reason this is random comes to my mind. 50 Cent. I know it's so
Okay.
random, right? So he had this song and he was like, sunny days.
21 Questions by
No,
50 Cent.
it wasn't 21 questions, but that's a good one too. No,
Was
he
it
had,
not?
it was, I don't think it was that one. He had his other lyric and he was like, sunny days wouldn't be so sunny if it wasn't for rain.
See,
I
I'm
think,
thinking of.
okay.
Okay,
I
I
think
got
that
you.
was him
I
that
got
said
you.
that. I could be wrong. Could be a different artist, but you get that, right? You get the point that that's just a course of life. So with your relationship, if you bring that level of acceptance and acknowledge that sometimes things are going to go maybe left, you'll be in a rut. Maybe you just get really busy with the school schedule with the kids. Maybe work gets really busy. Maybe seasonal depression hits you, and all of those give you the opportunities to say no to the spark, right? To say no, I don't
Hmm.
want to go on a date. And with that, it's important to acknowledge that element of a ritual, right? A ritual has discipline that you consistently do it because it works to create a positive outcome. So by acknowledging that, if you find yourself in this situation and you're married and you're like, you know what, the spark was there and now it's not, well, also ask yourself, how consistent are you? Do you go and do the action? And at times we may not feel it. Like in the very beginning, you may go, well, I'm so excited to go on a date with my partner. And then you now look and you go, I'm not excited. And then the question is, when was the last time you went? You're like, well, I haven't been in 3 months.
Hmm.
It's hard to really evaluate it. It'd be different if maybe you shared, well, I went on, a date once a week to different type of places. See what happens then when you're doing that, when you're consistently going. Sometimes what happens is our feelings catch up. Sometimes we need to remember. Photo albums do a wonderful job of that. So think on that as you're listening in.
Oh, absolutely. As you're talking about figuring out exactly what it is to maintain your relationship, um, I think we also have to acknowledge those foundational things that are healthy in our relationships, like the values that we have with one another, values and connections. Um, just as like a pivot, because going on these dates and making this effort, it's all so important. But if the foundation of respect for one another isn't there, if the foundation of understanding each other's principles, values, hopes, and fears isn't there, it's going to make it even more difficult to maintain. the relationship with one another.
Correct. Yeah. And that goes right. That goes into this whole topic here, romantic relationships, that there must be a foundation of values and connection. Um, I'm, I love the discussion of values. I think we as humans are extremely connected to them, sometimes whether we know it or not. I
Hmm.
find a very helpful activity is for you to log everything that you do for a whole week. It's extremely boring, and most people don't do it. But if you if you do it, you'll find that you do a lot of things. You also find that some of those, maybe not all, connect to your values. And it's quite interesting because when you have that in front of you, you go, oh, I value downtime. Maybe you do a lot of Netflix and hanging out and video games, you value downtime.
Mm.
Or maybe you do a lot of walking. So then maybe you value mindfulness, awareness, wellness, movement. And when it comes to these values, you bring them out and you look at your partner, your significant other, and what you're trying to do is you're trying to weave it together. You're trying to say, hey, this is my world over here. Look. And they're looking at you and they see all of these little hashtags of values. And
Hmm.
you're trying to connect with them on some of those. And what's going to happen is some are going to be great. You may go, you know what? I see that you like to chill. You like to hang out. You like self care. You like downtime. I want to do that with you. So now you do that together. And then sometimes what will happen is you see this value and maybe it's movement and your partner likes to go running and you're like, oh shit, I don't like to go running. Right. So that gives you the option to steer away and say, we can't do nothing there. Or you can look at indirect support. Maybe, well, I'll go with you and here's the pathway that you take when you run. I'll walk it. And every so often, give me a kiss and then keep going. It's gonna get sweaty, but you're trying to just mold it in there, and that's just one example. The key element there is you have these values, and then you bring them together and see how many of those you can relate on, and the one that you're not 100% on, find a way to indirectly support one another.
First of all, I just have that picture of my head of like the walking partner and the running partner. I think that's so absolutely precious. Number one. Number two, I love the way that you framed that discussion about values, and utilizing it as a tool to strengthen your relationship. You know, when you find your values, it can be really important. Actually, I'm not going to kneecap that sentence. It is really important for you to come together and evaluate your values with one another. Um, and then maybe apply a little bit of compromise, like you were talking about, and figure out what sort of things can be negotiated on. Like, if I value downtime, but my partner really values being active, can you have an understanding of one another that I'm going to go out and have a good time with my friends, but I know that I'll be home in time to get in bed with you at 9 because I know that that nighttime quality time is so important to you? Or, hey, this is something that I'm really not willing to compromise my values for. So, where does that leave us in being able to have those very frank conversations with the people that we love or the people we want to love in order to strengthen and deepen those relationships and hopefully build something that lasts?
Yeah, built something that lasts. That's a good term there. And that goes into, we're discussing romantic relationships. You can tie it to many. Is really looking at, are you building something that lasts? And often people will quickly say yes, but slow down, like really slow down and think about the minute details. The if we break it down to an atom, think about all of it. The relationship you have with your significant other, are you building it to last? There are positive habits that we can discuss here all day, and behaviors and practices to build relationships. Go on a date,
Mhm.
check in with each other, ask deep questions, listen to 50 Cent 21 questions. um,
And
there's
ask each other every last one of
every
those
last one of them.
questions.
There's, while listening to him in the background. There's
Yes.
there's so many of them, and I think we often fail to remember that On the other end, there's a whole list of the ones that are creating distance and disconnect. Every moment that we get home and we choose to dig our nose into our phone, those are minutes gone. That you're
Mhm.
disconnecting from your partner. And I get all of the examples of maybe you're checking on work or all those things. I'm highlighting the ones that are a bit more purposeful.
Mhm.
All those moments that you're at work and you do have some time off, but you can check in with your partner and then you don't. That creates something that creates potential further disconnect. The moments that you're in a conversation and then you get all into your feelings, which I get feelings, I certainly get into mine, and then you decide to become a wall of silence, or you decide to
Mhm.
fight fire with fire, right? That's a skill that is building a bigger wall, that is creating further distance. So what I mean to say here is that everything that we do matters. Some
Mhm.
things build us closer to our partners, some things build us further away. And it's important to look at both of those sides, not just one. There's a book, I think by a Navy SEAL, called Ownership. I think it's Taking Ownership or Ownership, one of those titles. And it
Mhm.
just speaks a lot on taking personal accountability. Looking at your this is how I pulled the information. Looking at your relationship and you by yourself, just thinking and going, all right, let me scan everything that I do and
Mm.
see, what am I doing that's building us? What am I doing that's creating further distance? You don't need your partner's help for that. You can do that on your own. And the goal is that you identify both sides. The good ones, great. Keep doing those. The ones that are not so hot, great. Be honest with yourself. You pulled it out there. Now do something about it.
Mhm. I love that. Like, you don't need your partner to do that with you. Like, you can be responsible and recognize your own responsibilities for growth and distance in the relationships that you have. I personally think if you're willing to sit down and take the time to do something like that, that's absolutely a green flag. Like, that's a green flag for sure. And it
Yeah.
means that you're really dedicated to the relationship and you want to see the growth and change.
And then let's see from here. I know we've been hovering over the green flag and red flags. I can't remember. Did we give a definition to what green means and what red means?
No, we didn't, but I don't mind popping a definition in here
Yeah.
real quick. So, our green flags for dating, for those who don't understand or for those who are unfamiliar, is things that you see in a relationship where you're like, oh, yeah, this is absolutely a like positive behavior. Positive behavior. This is a healthy relationship thing. Love to see it. Yes, yes, yes. Thumbs up. I want more. On the other side of that are red flags. Ooh, no, thank you. That is the sign of an unhealthy relationship, unhealthy actions, and this is, I think, a more modern concept in dating. I'm not going to say that it absolutely is, but I've heard it popularized more, especially like on TikTok. People are talking red flags, green flags, even beige flags, which a whole is a
Hmm.
whole other
Interesting.
thing.
Yeah.
So, it's just little neat things, quirks, if you would, that your partner has. They're not bad, they're not good. It's just kind of stuff that your partner does that makes them unique. That's a beige flag. So, but that's another story for another day. Let's talk a little more about what some of the green flags we think about in healthy relationships are. Maybe like your top 3 green flags.
Oh, there's so many good ones. That's interesting. Beige. So I like the definitions, and I think it's important to know red and green flags because they relate to all relationships. Today, we're discussing intimate ones, but you can play with them in all of those, including the one with yourself. The in the prior item that I was mentioning, as far as like ownership, that also relates to varying relationships, not just intimate. With red and green, so I think one that comes to mind is your so there's your authentic self. Like there's you being able to
Mhm.
go like I love this person that I am. And finding yourself in a relationship where someone comes in and they highlight that. Like they go, I love that
Mhm.
person too and I want to just shine a light over that person. And that means that you can speak your mind. You can walk your walk, you can pursue your career goals and your personal goals and do all of these things that you want to do with your life.
Mhm.
And we all get that there's going to be some shifting here and there, things that we can do and can't do depending on life circumstances.
Mhm.
So that's a green, and then a red, of course, is you know who you are, and you know all those things about you. But now you're in this space, and you you feel you feel lost. You feel like
Mhm.
that person you once knew is no longer here, and there's a shade of them. And even thinking about it brings tears to your eyes, but you can't share those tears with your partner. Right,
Mm.
that's a red flag, and it's deep in there. And if you feel those words, and then there's some work that needs to be done there. And JC and I were hovering over areas that can poke a little bit, right? In the clinical space, we use the word it could be triggering. So if you do find any of these conversations that you're listening on the podcast to do that, please give yourself the gift to reach out. Whether you reach out to um, someone in your local area, someone online, reaching out to a clinician, a practitioner, somebody of support to help you get from A to B.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Please, like, prioritize yourself. We want this to be a learning space and not a painful one. Um, One of the red and green flags that I always think about are like green flags mean go, so like go for the relationship. Uh, Being supportive is a huge green flag, and on the other side of that, I think that being respected and being respectful is a green flag broadly. How do
Mm-hmm.
they treat the wait staff? How do they talk to their loved ones? How do they talk to random people on the street? Are they respectful? Because, the hope is that if they will respect those other folk, they will respect you and make sure that you see those signs of respect in your relationship. On the other side of that, a red flag opposite might be someone who is controlling or disrespectful. Are they jealous? Do they refuse to compromise with you and belittle you and try to control aspects of your life that you deserve to have autonomy over?
Yeah. The let's see, a green flag that I'll add there is vulnerability. So
Hmm.
that's a big term there. That's you being able to share your thoughts and feelings, and also receiving that from your partner. You knowing their inner world, their likes, their dislikes, their values, their goals, their dreams, their day to day grind. You know what's happening in their space. You feel part of it. If you're walking down a trail, you're right next to them. Versus on
Hmm.
a whole different trail, wondering what theirs looks like and only having access to it for periods of the day. A red flag, this one I'm going to use the word boundary, was also a big word too. And it
Hmm.
does require with this red flag, you first acknowledging what your boundaries are and that significant other, really colliding with them. So it could be boundary as far as consent. When you say no, no is no. But that's not happening. It could
Hmm.
be boundaries with information. Maybe there's things that you tell them you confide in, and then now they're sharing that with other people, and it just goes on and on. So really, doing some work in that space.
Oh, absolutely. Knowing and understanding that part, which I think we ignore consent conversations once the word relationship is thrown out there, because we assume consent in relationships. And that's all of them, not just romantic, but we're just talking about romantic relationships this time around. So those are some things I need you to keep in mind when you're choosing to date and choosing to get closer to others. because ultimately the goal of having a relationship isn't just to have a body to fill the void of that loneliness, but it's to build something that lasts, grow with somebody, um, fulfill a need of yours, and be able to fulfill somebody else's need in a way that's like very what's the word I'm looking for? I was going to use the word simpatico. That's not correct. Um, symbiotic. There we go.
There we go.
For the both of you.
Yeah. This is an interesting one. Maybe green flag is knowing your green flag.
You know what? Fair. Very fair.
This has been a packed episode. I think we put a lot of good nuggets in here. What do you think?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And honestly, I could talk for literal hours about dating culture, but that might just have to be a side project. Maybe instead of the couch, I'll just make the cushion and it'll just be me talking about relationships for an hour.
There you go. That's good though, right? That there's like so much more, and hopefully, as a listener, you're on your toes and you're listening in, and yeah, know that there's more. There's more green flags. There's more to know, and that's available to you. You know, there's so many resources out there. Again, connect with a counselor, mental health practitioner, some sort of professional there that can lead you forward. If you get stuck, there's resources. You know, I think sometimes we forget that we can hop online and look at different directories. You know, like let's see, what's a common one?
Psychology Today,
Yep.
inclusive therapists,
Yep.
therapy den, a bunch of them.
Yeah. Any last words before we shift over to the personal growth challenge?
Um, just that relationships take time to build, romantic relationships especially. So, when you're ready to take the plunge, know that it is scary and rewarding. And if you are scared to jump into the world of dating, do it scared.
Yeah, that's completely okay. You'll find your footing along the way.
You will.
Sometimes we need to be a little bit out of balance, and
Yeah.
that doesn't mean that we are. There's something for that. Like sometimes when we are in relationships and we're building love, we feel out of balance, but that's what
Mm-hmm.
makes it love, to be out of balance while in balance.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. Love this conversation.
You want to go first or second for the personal growth challenge?
I want to go first.
Let's hear it.
Okay, so this is a little bit of a zesty one. I'm really putting the challenge and personal growth challenge. For those of you who are actively dating, or for those of you who are feeling some dissatisfaction in your current relationship or uncertainty, I have a journal prompt for you if you would. And the question I'm asking is, what problems are you willing to tolerate in a relationship?
That's good. Yeah, that's real good.
Like I said, it's a little zesty because you're gonna think back to some relationships that were maybe not as successful, and you might notice some unhealthy patterns that you should work on for success in your future relationships.
Mm-hmm. All right, here is mine before we head off. I'd like for you to play green light, red light in
Okay.
your home space. So green light means that you're doing all the green flags, and red light means you're doing the red light ones, which hopefully there's no red lights. But the point of
Mm-hmm.
this is really to build awareness and to steer you away from the red. So in the house, get a sheet of paper, have one side red, one side green. And as the day goes on, do your best to be conscious about keeping it on green.
I'm into that. I'm very into that. Listen, we gonna cause some arguments. Maybe this this episode might cause some arguments at home.
Well, there's resources around.
Wanted. You'll be alright.
Keep fighting the good fight. All right. So this wraps us up, and we are we're heading into episode 4. And that one goes into more of marriage, more of the foundation that goes into a happy, long lasting marriage.
Yes, that's also going to be a doozy of episode, and we're really excited for you guys to join us next time.
All right. Y'all have a great day.
See ya.